Hello students, how are you? Are you fine? Well, this is history second video session for grade 10. Student, in our today's lesson, we are going to discuss about conflict change in Asia. Well done student. In our previous class, we have discussed about Unit 6, Post-World War II Global Development. In that topic, we have identified the establishment of United Nations Organization and emergence of the Cold War. Students, what does the Cold War mean? As we have discussed, two nations, particularly United Nations and Soviet Russia, emerged as so powerful who dominated the world politics after World War II. The Cold War marked the start of tension between these two rival powers. For example, in Western Europe, democratic governments were established and they allied with the United States of America, whereas the Eastern European states joined with and stayed under the domination of USSR or Soviet Russia. Cold War was an economic rivalry between these West and Eastern districts. The Western followed a free enterprise capitalism and the Eastern or the Russian satellites followed state-controlled or centralized economic system. Cold War was not confined in Europe, but it also propagated in Asia. In our today's lesson, we are going to deal with the Chinese Revolution, the Vietnam War, and the Arab-Israel War. Students, after learning this topic, you will be able to explain how Cold War propagated in Asia. You will be able to identify the major causes of the Russian Revolution. You will be able to describe the major political and economic reforms taken by Mao Zedong after 1949. And you will be able to analyze the sacrifice paid by the Vietnamese people to liberate their independence or to declare their independence and unity. Finally, you will be able to set up or point out the cause and results of the Arab-Israel War. Well done, students. Let's proceed to discuss the Chinese Revolution. China, for a long period of time, was ruled by a feudal despotic administration system. From 1644 to 1911, China was ruled by a Manchu dynasty. During this period, Chinese economic and political system was highly weakened. Landlords of the Manchu dynasty controlled the lands of the peasant. The peasant became landless. They obligated to live a bad life. This and other related factors became the major cause for the outbreak of the Chinese Revolution in early 20th century. Since 1890s, different political parties, nationalists, intellectuals began to oppose the administration system of the Manchu dynasty. For example, one of the most important party, named as the Kuomintang, tried to oppose and establish its own government after 1911. The Kuomintang was founded by Dr. Sun Yat-sen. Dr. Sun Yat-sen broke a war with the Chinese Manchu regional warlords and finally he declared a Republic of China and he became the first president in 1911. Gradually, in 1921, a new political party named as the Chinese Communist Party was established. This party tried to join with the Kuomintang to eradicate the warlords from all over China. This allied front or the allied target was stayed until 1925. But after 1925, these two parties came into a struggle because the Chiang Kai-shek, who followed Dr. Sun Yat-sen, didn't want the need of the Chinese Communist Party within his own government. So this became a beginning for the collapse of the first Allied power of the Kuomintang and the Chinese Communist Party. Since 1927, civil war was broke out between these two parties. In 1934, the Kuomintang Party eradicated the Chinese Communist Party or CCP from their original center, Kiangasi. The CCP tried to liberate themselves and they goes to a new district to northwestern China, a place called Yan'an. This long journey was known as a long march in Chinese history. Students, you can observe them up here, Kiangasi, the original center of the Chinese Communist Party here, and they fled from their original center to a new district at Yan'an. They established their own center in this new place due to the pressure that came from the Chinese Communist Party. Well, students, you can also see how China was during World War II. These parts of China was monopolized or controlled by the Japanese during World War II. These parts of China was controlled by the Communist Party, and this area was covered or controlled by a new party, the Chinese Communist Party. Well done, student. At Yan'an, Mao Zedong established his own powerful political system there because he got peasant or public support there, because he distributed the land to the peasant. He also mobilized a new group and sent this group to the rural parts of China to consolidate its power over the lords or the Manchu warlords there. Mao Zedong was the leader of the Chinese Communist Party during their flight from Kiangasi to Yan'an. He aggravated his political system at Yan'an. He evoked the nationalists of China there by a slogan, "Let Chinese stop fighting among ourselves, let the Chinese unite, and let we struggle against our common enemy, Japan." So he got many number of support from the peasant and he developed his own power at Yan'an. In 1937, a new allied front was established between the Kuomintang and the CCP. This was done to eradicate Japanese from China. Japan ruled Manchuria in 1931, and then in 1937, Japan wanted to control the whole China. But the Chinese Communist Party as well as the Kuomintang tried to declare the independence of China from Japanese rule, and they entered into a united front after 1937. Well, students, since 1937 to 1945, these two parties jointly waged war over Japan. Finally, China liberated from Japanese rule in 1945 through the allied force of the allied power as well as these two parties. However, their relation was broke out after 1945. The second civil war was broke out between this party, and the civil war lasted from 1945 to 1949. 1949, the Chinese Communist Party got great support and defeated the Kuomintang Party that was led by Chiang Kai-shek. In 1949, China entered into a new era and established it as the Communist Chinese Republic. In 1949, Mao Zedong became as president. Well done, student. After 1949, Mao Zedong took many number of reforms, political, economic, and social reforms. What are the reforms taken by Mao Zedong after he declared the Chinese Communist Republic in 1949? Let's see one by one. 1. He redistributed the land to the peasant. He nationalized the industries and business enterprise, and he implemented the first 5-year plan from 1953 to 1957. In this plan, he expanded or increased agricultural cooperatives. He also expanded the industrial field throughout China. He also designed the Great Proletarian Cultural Revolution in 1966. This cultural revolution was designed for mainly to fight against reactionary views or ideas, or can say this revisionist. And he tried to fight against corruption. Even he transformed the Chinese culture in this proclamation or this cultural revolution that was designed in 1966. After that time onwards, China became a free state or declared its independence, and it became a powerful state in Asia in terms of economy and politics. China became the master of leader of the Communist Party of the Communist bloc in the world. Well, students, having this in mind, let's proceed to discuss the next sub-topic, the Vietnam War. Vietnam was one of the first Asian states who was affected by the Cold War. The state of Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam, commonly named as Indochina, was ruled by France for a long period of time, from the period 1880s to 1954. This state tried to liberate themselves from French imperialism. For example, one of the outstanding individuals named as Ho Chi Minh declared the Indochina Communist Party in 1930, and later he tried to develop a new nationalist figure, the Vietnam Nationalist Front, in 1945. Well, however, France, who abrogated its power from Indochina during World War II, tried to re-establish her own power over Vietnam and the rest states of Indochina. However, in 1954, the most outstanding individual was named as Ho Chi Minh, defeated the French rule from Vietnam at a place called Dien Bien Phu in 1954. After that, French declared the independence of Vietnam. Immediately after the defeat of France, they concluded an agreement at a place called Geneva in 1954. At Geneva, Britain, USSR, and Communist China attended. French proclaimed the independence of Vietnam and its rule in Indochina. Vietnam was divided into two groups, the North and the South District. You can see the map here. In 1954, at Geneva Accords, Vietnam was divided into two districts, North and South, at 17 parallel. The northern Vietnam was dominated by a communist party under the leadership of Ho Chi Minh here. And the southern Vietnam was a pro-Western district dominated by the American imperialism, and America established her own government in 1955 under the leadership of Ngo Dinh Diem here. Well, students, this is area a demilitarized zone that was proclaimed after 1954. And this was a route how Ho Chi Minh entered into southern Vietnam to liberate the South Vietnam from the USA imperialism and to unite the South and the North Vietnam under one communist party. In South Vietnam, they established a new front. This front was known as the National Liberation Front. This front had its own military army known as Viet Congs. The Viet Congs was highly assisted by Ho Chi Minh, or the North Vietnam group. The Ho Chi Minh Party as well as the Viet Congs tried to liberate South Vietnam from French imperialism. USA raised her own army to defend the southern districts that was designed mainly to sack the communist expansion around the area. But even if they implemented a newly explored war weapons of the period, the USA and South Vietnam didn't able to sustain themselves from the Northern Vietnam front. Finally, in 1969, a person named as Nixon, was the American president, implemented a new policy known as Vietnamization policy. Student, what does Vietnamization mean? Vietnamization policy was a policy designed by Nixon in 1969. It was intended to enable South Vietnam to defend their state without much external support. This proclamation was designed mainly to insult down the American public pressure against Johnson, because during the war, many number of civilian lives were lost as the battle fought between North and South Vietnam. So public pressure upgrew after 1963. So they opposed the government at home, or that means in USA. So in order to insult this system, this pressure, Nixon developed Vietnamization policy. After that, the Americans decreased their intervention in South Vietnam, and the South Vietnam Viet Congs tried to liberate themselves up to 1974. In 1974, Viet Congs declared their independence from USA. This, as a result, the Viet Congs and the North Vietnam unity declared their independence. The government of South Vietnam was collapsed, unification of Vietnam was realized, and communist government was declared in Vietnam. Well done, student. This is all about the Vietnam War. Let's proceed to the last topic, the Arab-Israel War. Before going to discuss the Arab-Israel War, let's discuss why the Jewish proclaim in Palestine, why the Arab proclaim their district in Palestine. The Jewish, the word came from a Hebrew, Yehudi, from a person from the district of Judea. The district was named after the son of Jacob, Judah. Having this in mind, the Jewish were lived in present-day Palestine since 1500 BC. During that time, or after that time onwards, the Jewish was defeated and conquered by the Babylon in around 586 BC. Many number of Jews fled from their own original center, and they obliged to settle in their neighboring states. And during the period of Jesus Christ, or the 1st century AD, the Palestine area was controlled or ruled by the Romans. The Jesuits, the Jewish people, tried to liberate themselves from Roman rule, and they outscored a revolt in 70 AD and in 1935 AD. However, these both revolts were crushed by the Romans. Then the Jewish fled outside their own district, and they obliged to live throughout the world after that time onwards. Well, students, the Arabs originally lived in present-day of Saudi Arabia, but after the expansion of Islam in Saudi Arabia in 7th century, they began to expand their territory across the Horn of Africa and the Middle East. During that time, they conquered Palestine since 7th century AD, and in 16th century AD, the Ottoman Turks, who were Muslim but not Arabs, they controlled the Middle East, including Palestine, and their rule stayed until World War I. So the Arabs proclaimed Palestine as their own home, and the Jewish at the same time proclaimed the Palestine as their own home. This resulted for the outbreak of the Arab-Israel War in the 20th century, where Middle East before First World War, Ottoman Turkey withdrew from Palestine area, and the Palestine area was divided into two. That was under the mandate rule of Britain and mandate rule of France. Britain controlled the Palestine, Jordan and Iraq district, and France controlled Lebanon and Syria. During that time, or in 1970, Britain declared the Balfour Declaration. The Balfour Declaration was designed to give a homeland for Jews in Palestine. It was designed by a British foreign minister during that time, Lord Balfour. So Jews got a homeland and they began to settle in their area, the previous area where they lived for 2,000 years. After the declaration of Balfour, many number of Jewish people from all over the world came to Palestine and they began to settle their homes there. Well, you can observe the chart here. After the declaration of Balfour, or after 1990, many number of Jews came to settle in Palestine area. You can observe here 1990, the Palestine reached to 60,000 people and the Arab to 700,000. Here, 1929, the Jews grow into 160,000. In 1939, the Jews grow into 430,000. And in 1947, the Jewish people reached to 600,000. So this resulted or a revolt, the outbreak of war between these two nationalists, the Arabs and the Jews. Zionism was established as an ideology and movement of Jews to establish a homeland in Palestine. Zionism, named after a Mount Zion, is found around Jerusalem. The movement began to widespread after the first Zionist Congress in 1897, and Theodor Herzl considered as the founder of this movement. Zionism, an important political movement done by Jewish people to find out a homeland in Palestine. Britain took this issue to the United Nations Organization because this issue became difficult to solve on herself. The United Nations tried to solve the problem and it divided the Palestine area into 3 parts. You can observe the map here. Palestine divided into 3 parts here. This is a Jewish land given by United Nations Organization, and the yellowish color was a settlement given for the Arab state, and Jerusalem became the first an international state. This issue resulted for the outbreak of a war. The first Arab-Israel war from 1948 to 1949. The Palestine Arabian state, particularly Egypt, Syria, Iraq, and Transjordan armies waged war over a newly created Israel. Israel created in 1948, and Ben Gurion became the first president. Israel had pushed armies, all Arab armies in all fronts. Here you can observe from the Lebanon, they propagated army to south to Jewish land to control or to conquer the Jewish land here. Here you can observe the Syrian force from northwestern direction, and here from the Iraqi force from the eastern direction. The same, the Transjordan force here, and here Egypt, one of the Arab state, who tried to conquer the Jewish settlement here. So the first Arab-Israel war was broke out between these Palestinian Arabs and the Israelites. But Israel conquered all, or Israel defended all fronts from all Arab states. Israel added half of Jerusalem and northwestern coastal areas of the Mediterranean Sea. The Arabs refugees from Israel conquered territory fled to neighboring state, estimated to be 750,000 society, who became a refugee after first Arab-Israel war. The second Arab-Israel war in 1956. This war was known as the Suez Canal Crisis. The Suez Canal Crisis was broke out because Gamal Abdel Nasser, the ruler of Egypt during that time, nationalized the Suez Canal that was controlled by Britain and France before. Israel waged war on Britain by the assistance of Britain and France. USA and United Nations Organization forced Israel, Britain and France to stop war. and United Nations Organization, USSR, and USA saved Egypt from total defeat. The Third Arab-Israel War was broke out in June 1967. This war, known as the Six-Day War, because it conducted within 6 days. A series of border conflicts broke out between the Jewish settlement and the Palestinian Arabs. So Jordan, Iraq, Egypt waged war over Israel. USSR allied with the Arab state. Britain, France, USA allied with Israel. Israel became so powerful in this war again. Israel controlled many number of districts, Golan Heights from Syria, the Sinai and Gaza Strip from Egypt, and West Bank from Jordan. The Fourth Arab-Israel War. This war was broke out in 1973 and was known as Yom Kippur War. Egypt, Syria, and other Arab states opened war against Israel during their holiday. Even if there is an initial success done by Egypt under Anwar Sadat, the Arab states were defeated again as the Fourth Arab-Israel War. After the Fourth Arab-Israel War, Palestine intensified a new military organization against Jews. They organized a guerrilla fighting. For example, the Fedayeen, the Palestine Liberation Organization, and Black September was designed to attack Israel or Jews. Finally, in 1878, an agreement was conducted at a place called Camp David in Washington, D.C. This was signed by USA under Jimmy Carter, Egypt under Anwar Sadat, and Israel under Menachem Begin. Egypt alone proclaimed the state of Israel, but other Arab states didn't agree for the creation of Israel as an independent state in Palestine. The recognition to Israel, the state of Israel, by all Arab states and territories occupied by newly created Israel became an issue that have not been resolved yet. To sum up, in our today's lesson, we have discussed about the Chinese Revolution, the Vietnam War, and the Arab-Israel War. China declared her own independence from the Japanese imperialism in 1945 and declared the Chinese Communist Republic of China in 1949. It was done by Mao Zedong. China became a leading power in the world, in leading the communist bloc. The Vietnam War, through a series of struggles, the Vietnam people declared their own independence from French imperialism, and they declared their own unity in 1976. The Arab and Israel War. After the creation of Israel, the Middle East became an international issue, which is not solved yet, because the newly created Israel and the Arab state didn't agree on the creation of the new state of Israel in Palestine. Thank you very much. Well done, students. This is all about our today's lesson. Next, we'll proceed to discuss a new chapter, Unit 8, Ethiopia from 1941 to 1991. Until then, have a nice time.